Yes, and just so everyone's aware, this meeting is being recorded. We do that so that people who cannot access the meeting in real time are able to view the presentations later. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes. Let's see, it's 6:01. We'll get started at 6:03. So you still have time to get comfortable in your chair, grab a beverage, and then our first guest tonight will be Dr. Eli Kostin, who is leading the task force to establish a civilian review board. And we are thrilled that they're joining us. Tonight is one of their regularly scheduled meetings. So we will be discussing that first so that they can hop off and go to their regular planned meeting. Thank you. Hello, Mariah. It's good to see you tonight.
Hello, Catherine. How are you tonight?
I am good. We are just going to wait a couple more minutes while people join in. But I look forward to hearing how summer school is going. You posted some terrific photographs of the activity over at Carver, and it looks like kids are happy to be back with their fellow students, and with their teachers.
Yes, they are. They are live wires. Yes, they are.
All right, we are going to wait one more minute and then we'll get started. Everyone's looking sharp, and I appreciate those who are joining us. Sven, are we disabling people's video? There's a question in the chat about that.
Yeah, I had that problem when I first came on.
Yes, we are, but we can go ahead and disable that because that was not intentional. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yes, although we reserve the right to disable everyone's video at any moment because we have had Zoom bombers in the past. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to kick off the meeting this evening with Dr. Eli Kostin, who is on the task force to establish a civilian review board. And their meeting, the regular scheduled meetings are Wednesday nights. So he is going to give us a brief sort of update on where they are, how people can find out more information and participate. But unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A because they have to hop to their meeting. So Dr. Kostin, thank you for being here. Where are we right now in this process?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So where we're at currently in the process is, so our charge is to make recommendations to City Council about how to best establish civilian oversight in the city of Richmond. So what's going to work for our community, and one of the places that we started out was identifying best practices from other jurisdictions, as well as reviewing relevant Virginia state laws and local laws that apply to civilian oversight bodies. And so examining how exactly the powers that the state gives line up with what other jurisdictions are already doing. And the reality is that civilian oversight doesn't look the same in any city. If you look across the board, there are lots of different models that do a lot of different things. And so we've started in reviewing, okay, well, what do other places do? And then started meeting with stakeholders in both community members and people like your council person to talk about what civilian oversight in Richmond might look like. We've met with the mayor's office, the public defender's office, the chief of police and deputy chief of police, and almost every single member of council to discuss what civilian oversight might look like in Richmond. What are the concerns that community members have that can be addressed by civilian oversight. And we actually next week have an upcoming town hall with the Richmond Police Department to see what their concerns are about establishing civilian oversight, right? Because ideally, we want something that is going to work for our community, but also something that will have buy-in from the police department, right? The goal of establishing civilian oversight isn't to be punitive towards the police, but to help restore confidence, you know, from members of the public that the police are in fact doing the right thing if there's question or concern about their activities or actions, right? And so we are still in the process of gathering input from community members. We've had 2 in-person town halls and 1 virtual town hall. We will have another virtual town hall, date to be determined, but here towards the end of the month, and another in-person town hall in the beginning of August, to share kind of what our initial recommendations might be so that we can get feedback from community members before finalizing that and presenting it to council. I'm dropping in the chat our information. There's a question from someone. We have a town hall with RPD only next week, but our 2 other town halls will be open to all members of the public. And our previous town hall meetings have been open to all members of the public as well. You can follow us at RVACRB on Twitter. We'll be posting the dates of those upcoming town halls that are going to be open to the public. You can also contact us at rvacrb@gmail.com if you have questions about what it is we're doing. And we also have a community survey that I've provided the link for to gather additional feedback from people who can't come out to our town halls or prefer to participate online. That, you know, we're asking questions about, for example, what powers should the civilian oversight body have? You know, how do we ensure that it's representative of our community in general, and things like that. So if you take a look at our Twitter, there are also links to all of our working documents there that you can review. And certainly if you have any questions, feel free to contact us and we're happy to clarify any of those issues for you. So is that solid overview, Councilperson Jordan? We will make so we don't record the town halls, but definitely the notes that we take at that meeting, we can make publicly available. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that overview. And for anyone who hasn't participated yet in these meetings, I think the task force has done a really good job of trying to be very open. I was impressed with, I thought people came, they felt very comfortable asking their questions, stating their opinions, definitely a diversity of viewpoints. And I think the last one maybe got a little bit spicy, but you know, that's what this discourse is about. There's not going to be a unity of opinion on this. So I'm really glad that you've had so many meetings and are continuing this process. So I appreciate you being here. And I'm sorry, again, just scheduling wise, there wasn't time to do a lot of Q&A, but I appreciate you answering the questions from the chat.
And I'll also point out before I have to go, we have our weekly task force meetings every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Those will go through the end of August. I dropped the Zoom link in the chat. So feel free to, you know, if you have questions, you can also feel free to join us in person because we have public comment both before, during, and after the meeting as well. So if you have thoughts that you'd like to share there, you're certainly welcome.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think our next agenda item is, let's go to Mariah White, our school board representative. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I know you guys have a very heavy schedule. I feel like it's almost on par with what we're doing over here at City Council. So how are things going? Tell us about graduation rates, how summer school is, and we do have time for questions during this segment. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to say good evening to Second District. Good evening. We have been quite busy. We had 9 graduations, Richmond Public Schools. I did attend 8 of the 9. I wanted to attend 9 of 9, but I somehow went to sleep on one of them and I didn't make it back in time, but I did do 8 of 9 of the Richmond Public graduations. I also did Maggie Walker, which is 9 of the 10 graduations. And they were great. It was a great day for all of our graduates. I want to give you an update on in our community. What we have been doing, it is big summer school time at Carver. It started on Monday, July the 12th, and it will end August the 13th. We have Carver School students there. We have Fox students. We have Munford, and we also have Cary. We have a principal. We have assistant principal from each one of the schools. For Carver, we have Mr. Sampson, and his assistant that is assisting him is Mrs. Pitts. We have Fox, Miss Oliver. Munford, we have Dr. Miller. Cary, we have Miss Singleton. So we are doing some great things. We open up. We're full. We have a waiting list, a big waiting list going on right now. So we will know on the 15th, which is Friday, can we really allow extra students? We do have a lot of students in the preschool and kindergarten. So we're waiting to see, and more will want to come in preschool and kindergarten. The next thing on my list, Second District, we established a partnership with Staples. Somehow I went up there and they said they had some stuff to give away and they gave it to the Second District schools. Each school received 23 boxes, which was for Carver, Fox, and we also have a school called Spradden Academy. I'm sorry, that's my dog, if you hear a dog barking. Spradden Academy. And we do have Mr. Lamont Trotter, who is the principal. He's on the line, you may see him, and he's going to give you a couple words of the school. We will be receiving some more boxes in September. I think my dog is trying to help me out in here. Go, stop. I'm sorry. We will be receiving some more boxes in September where Staples told us to come in for more boxes. We also want to I want everybody to get involved, all of our civic districts. We're going to do a Fox Carver and Spradden Academy campaign where we're going to stock the supply closet for our teachers. I don't want our teachers to have to spend money this year. And we know that during the pandemic, they didn't raise a lot of money. So the funds is low, even the PTA. And we want to do a closet, a campaign closet, where we can have the supplies for our teachers. So someone is always there. I know August the 1st through August the 7th is no tax. So you can purchase some supplies. And we also want to get involved with actually gift cards for our teachers, which is $5 or $10, so that we can give incentives to our teachers throughout the year, not just when it's Teacher Appreciation Day, but when it's throughout the whole year. So that's one thing that I'm going to put in my newsletter at the end of this month, which is Stock the Supply Closet campaign. And I do have a list that I received from one of my principals, Ms. Jacobs, and that list will be provided in the newsletter. Last night, we had a community meeting with at George with dealing with the building of the schools. I want to give a little update on that. That pretty much was the community coming out, telling us exactly how they feel, versus we were waiting for them to tell us how they wanted to design it. Because we want to address the RFP, which is mainly the design of the building, but we did not get that far. The meeting was adjourned. And let me see, did I say anything else? And for Spartan Academy, we do have three schools in this district. Most people know Fox Elementary, like I said. Most people know George Washington Carver, but we also have Spartan Academy. It's across the street from the statue of Bojangles, the big building over there to your right. And Mr. Trotter is going to tell you a little bit about Spartan Academy. And I am looking for in second district, if there is someone with businesses who would like to partnership with Spartan Academy. Spartan Academy is after you hear his little presentation, I think 3 to 5 minutes, we're trying to get businesses to partnership with Spartan so that they can offer the students after they graduate an opportunity to have some type of work on the job training, anything that you can offer in the business world for Spartan Academy. Spartan Academy is doing some great things. Mr. Trotter is doing some great things. They are actually graduating our dropouts that we have. We graduated 8 in June, just last month. He did some great things, and he's going to tell you about that. And I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Lamont Trotter, and you can give him a 3 to 5 minute presentation on about Spartan Academy.
Thank you, Board Member White. Good evening, District 2. Thank you for allowing me to come on board. I hope this will not be my last time. Lamont Trotter, principal here at Richmond Alternative School, right here in Jackson Ward. I'm sure everyone knows exactly where we're located. And so real quickly, what RAS stands for is something that's dear to me. It stands for reaching, accelerating, and supporting, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what we're trying to do with our students that enter our doors here at Richmond Alternative School. And so as Board Member White said, we're super excited because we did graduate 8 students in June. The number may seem low, and the reason why that is because many times our seniors, they go back to their comprehensive school to finish out their academics. So just for a point of clarification, we will never have a large 50 graduated seniors because many times our students are coming to us for various infractions. Sometimes they'd like to stay with us. So under the umbrella of Richmond Alternative School is Spartan Academy, is our ISEP program, and that's for students that are receiving their high school equivalency. And one new program that we have that is entitled REACH. And so REACH stands for Reaching Education Through Academics, Communication, and Hope. And so those are particular students that may have been involved in our court system. It just needs a little bit more support, smaller environment. And so that is a new program that is being developed right here at RAS. We're super excited also because our building will be 100 years old at the beginning of the year. And so we are looking for folks that would love to sit on a planning committee, because what we would like to do is begin to have 3 major projects between January and December of the upcoming year. And we would like to have 3 major projects that involve the community, as we also have small little activities, examples of, a fall festival for our families to come out during October, things like that. Last year, we had an annual turkey giveaway where we asked our staff and RPS staff to donate 1 turkey. We ended up with well over 250 turkeys that we fed our families with. And so as you find out more about RAS or want to know more about Richmond Alternative School, please don't hesitate to give me a call. I can be reached, and I'll drop my information in the chat at 804-774-8577. We welcome the opportunity to partner. We welcome the opportunity to get ideas on how our students can continue to be a catalyst to help change the vision of our city. So thank you so much. If you do have any questions, I'll wait around a few, but I will drop my information in the chat. Have a good evening.
Awesome. Mr. Trotter, thank you so much for being here. And I've asked Sven to drop the hands-on RVA link in the chat. I found that to be a terrific way to find volunteer opportunities with RPS. I think that's where you can sign up to help deliver meals and other things like that. So if you haven't already looked at that, if you're on this and you have time, that's a great way to be part of positive change for the city. So Mariah, we did have a couple of questions in the chat, and I'm going to go first to, let's see, someone has their
Could I
hand
please
raised.
explain my position? Is that the one on the construction of the new
That's
high?
one. Yes. So Ansley, would you like to ask your question? I think you're unmuted now.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Ms. White. Appreciated you mentioning the George Wythe meeting last night. I attended and just looking for a little bit of clarification, please. The meeting had been noticed as a presentation on design, as well as a discussion, as you mentioned, about what we were looking for in George Wythe. Can you elaborate on why we didn't have the presentation or discussion?
Thank you, Ms. Perkins, and how are you? And I'm glad, appreciate you being there last night. I'm not sure who was there last night, but I appreciate you being there representing 2nd District. Yes, you are absolutely right. The agenda was just like you had said. I was expecting the same thing, because I'm gonna put all of this in one together, because someone did ask the question about how I felt about it. I stand for schools building schools. I am one of the ones, the 5 that is against, I guess, the city building schools. It's time for us to build our schools right. And I was waiting to hear exactly what the community wanted, how they wanted their school design, what they wanted in their schools. And it ended up that they were just coming after us, as you probably seen. Just, they were interested in, they wanted built. I'm not sure that they read the RFP that is concerning the designs. And I'm not sure, our leadership, which is our president, she came in, and you probably was aware of that. And she just all of a sudden said, this meeting is adjourned. So we all, I looked up too, because I was a little shocked too of that. It's like, how that happened? So abrupt. So that was a part of our president. She came in late, and that happened. And no one knew what was going on. And I think someone did send an email today to her, and we were all CC, and she said, because it was after 8. I know it was 8:15, 8:20, but the way it was done was not good. It was not professional. It was just abrupt. The meeting is adjourned, and everybody's looking around. So you was absolutely right. And not even, they also have a new principal there, and he was there, and he came to me because he didn't understand, because they had set up over to the other side tables and chairs ready to start the round table. So I'm not sure when that's going to happen again, but hopefully that will happen again, that we will actually find out what the community wants. And I'm not sure, was all the community there, or was that just people there, venting on things that they wanted to for us to hear? Because that's what it seems like to be. But I am for schools building schools. We have a lot of schools that are dilapidated. We have a lot in the 2nd District. Everyone in 2nd District. I've been to the schools. Last Friday, I toured all 3 of the schools. I toured them the month before. I wrote down the problems myself. I sent them in myself to get fixed. All the job orders were done by the principals. I am staying on top of them, because these job orders have to be done, and the manpowers have to be maintained. And that goes for all 3 of my schools, Fox, Carver, and Spraton Academy. They are older schools, and they need to be either renovated or new schools. But talking about George Wythe School, yes, they need a new school also. They were on the chart since 2008. So was Woodville. They were on the list since 2008. But somehow today I'm on the board and it is a urgency. So we need the schools to be built right and not late. Somehow, one of our South Side schools, which is Huguenot, that was one of our newer schools. And as you know, the gym floor stayed unused for 2 years because the floor was not done correctly. We had a room over there that big science room or utility room that could not be used because that was done correctly. We need schools when they are built, they are built correctly and they can be used right then. So yes, I am for schools building schools, and I am aware of the mayor submitting the RFP. We didn't ask for a RFP, but that was done. And I do have, last night I was expecting to give out the different things that my demands that I want to see. I have a list of ideas and requirements that I want to see in this RFP that has been submitted. And if you have read the RFP, it doesn't give the board control of anything. So that is where it's coming in. And everybody, I think last night, was saying that the board needed to compromise with the mayor. And the board, some of the people on the board is saying, no, we don't really need to compromise. We need to come together, but we don't need to compromise with the mayor because the resolution was voted 5-4, schools build schools. And I'm going to address this other, while I'm talking about it, Ms. White, about the resolution. Would you let us know that was accomplished by board member Gibson, hadn't placed it on the agenda for April the 12th? Yes, I want to talk about that. Thank you, Ms. Chloe. What happened with that is board member Gibson did submit the resolution to the leadership. It is the leadership responsibility to say yes or no, whether they're going to put it on their agenda. We all understood that we thought it was going to be put on the agenda. The night came of the agenda, it was not there. So I'm not sure how the president and the vice president did not put it on the agenda. So during that time, Ms. Gibson came out and she presented her resolution vocally to everyone, but it was supposed to be there. It was submitted. Everybody knew what was on there way before that we had that meeting. So that happened all into the leadership of on the board.
Mariah, I appreciate you answering these questions, and attendees, thank you for bringing them up. I know school construction has been a really hot topic. I do want to be mindful that we have some other guests here that have commitments that they have to get to. What's the best way for people to follow up with you, Mariah, on this
They
topic?
can
Or any
email
topic?
if you want to stay, if you want to be on my newsletter. I know I've sent the newsletter out to every civic president to ensure that they spread it out into the community. But if you want your own newsletter, you can actually send it to me by email, and I'm going to update this, George Wolf, because it is a hot topic in my newsletter. You can call me, you can email me. I'm easy accessible. I'm on ground all times at all schools. Any way you want to reach me, I'm there to talk about it. Any question that you want to know, I'm there to talk about it with you.
Okay,
But thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And Sven has put your Facebook page in here. So that's, I think, where you can sign up for her newsletter and see the contact information. Yep, and there's her email address. So we're going to move on to our next guest. Thank you, Ms. White, Mr. Trotter, for all the good work you do for RPS and for our students and our families. We're delighted that our Commonwealth Attorney, Colette McEachin, is with us this evening. And first, congratulations on winning your primary. I think the last time you were with us, you and we also had Tom Barber, who introduced himself, and it takes a lot to step forward and run for office. So admire everyone who goes through that process. But we appreciate you spending some time tonight to tell us about what's going on with the new laws and answer questions and help keep our district informed. So thank you for being here.
Okay, well, thank you. It's always good to be in front of the second district. And first of all, I want to thank those of you who voted for me in the Democratic primary on June 8th. I appreciate your vote. Please remember that the general election is coming up on November 2nd. And so there's always an election right around the corner in Virginia. But I do appreciate your vote, and I take the honor of being the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney very seriously. So I don't think, Councilwoman Jordan, that did I do the demonstration with the sugar? With
No,
second
you did
district?
not do that for us, but I know you did that, I think, for Carver. And
Okay.
while you get that organized, I did want to acknowledge that Dawn Adams is with us. Delegate Dawn Adams is with us. Thank you for being here. And I see, yeah, so I love seeing these familiar faces and other leaders with us. Thank you for being here. And yes, the sugar packet. I heard about this.
All right, so as you all know by now, it is legal in Virginia to have 1 ounce or less of marijuana in your personal possession. And a lot of times people don't know, what does an ounce of marijuana actually look like? And so each of these in this bowl is a 1 ounce, a 1 gram packet of Sweet and Low that you could find in any restaurant or grocery store. And 28 of these packets is 1 ounce. So if you put marijuana in 28 of these and put them in a little sugar bowl, this is what 1 ounce of marijuana looks like. You have to be going through the marijuana laws, and if the delegate feels the need to correct me, I hope she will. So the marijuana law is you have to be over the age of 21. If you are 18 to 21, you are not allowed to possess marijuana. You can only possess legally up to 1 ounce without any consequences. If you possess more than 1 ounce, up to 1 pound, there is a $25 civil penalty. It's not a criminal fine, and it's not a criminal charge. It's a civil penalty. And then it becomes criminal, obviously, at a higher weight level. You cannot smoke marijuana publicly or ingest marijuana publicly. You cannot possess marijuana on school grounds. You cannot possess marijuana while you are driving. And there's going to be some litigation in the criminal courts, and the General Assembly may review this in either the August special session that they're going to have or next year in January, about marijuana being in a closed, I think it's a closed vessel or a closed container. So here's the question: does that mean that you can have marijuana in a little plastic sandwich bag, but as long as it's zipped on the top, that's a closed container? Or does it mean that the marijuana needs to be in a glove box, or it needs to be in the trunk of your car so that it's clear that you can't access it? Those are things that are going to have to be worked out. So the safest position is to only use marijuana at your home or within the curtilage of your home. Since marijuana cannot be sold or distributed in Virginia, the question is, well, how do you get the marijuana that you want to smoke if you can't purchase it and it's not for sale, it can't be distributed by any person or any entity? And so that is also something that the General Assembly is going to work on. I think their temporary workaround was that you could grow your own marijuana. And so to that end, the law is that every household can have up to four plants. The plants have to be labeled with your name and either your social security number or your driver's license. And the plants cannot be visible from a public sidewalk or visible to the public. So that's it for marijuana. a couple of other, and I'm happy to take any questions in the chat, or if you want to email me questions, my email at the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, I will put in the chat when I'm done. There were also questions about expungements, and I have told you all in the past that what I decided to do as a policy measure to make it easier for people to get charges, not convictions, but charges expunged, is to make sure that they have that information in court when that charge is dismissed or null crossed by the Commonwealth or the court. It tells them exactly where to go. They go to the circuit court clerk's office. So regardless of whether or not the charge was dismissed in general district court, you still have to go to circuit court, to the circuit court clerk's office. But once you get there, there will be a form that you fill out. And instead of you're then having to find the sheriff or a third party process server to serve that filing on the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, which is required by statute, I have decided as a matter of policy to waive that. And so you can just walk your form down to my office and hand it to the receptionist, and that will be considered filed. So I'm hoping to increase the roughly 200 expungements that we did last year to a higher number this year, especially now that the effects of COVID are slowly waning. In addition, there are no more searches based on marijuana. There used to be a lot of cases where there was a traffic stop and then there was allegedly an odor of marijuana. And then that led to a search, and that led to sometimes other things. The mere odor of marijuana can no longer be the basis of a traffic stop or a search. The habitual offender driving policy has been abrogated by the General Assembly. That statute has been repealed, and anybody who is currently a habitual offender should have received or will receive a letter from the Division of Motor Vehicles explaining how you can get your license back. The charge of felony possession, felony petty larceny no longer exists. It used to be the case that I see Sven is giving me the sign to stop talking. So I'll put my information in the chat, but basically felony petty larceny no longer exists. And so no matter how many times you are charged or convicted of petty larceny, which is anything $1,000 or less, you will never be charged with a felony and therefore not convicted of a felony. I don't know if there's time for any questions, but that's a short report.
I apologize. I did not mean to be cutting you off there.
I thought that was your and you have 5 minutes, you have 2 minutes left.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. So I was just reminding folks if they have any questions, drop them in the chat or raise your hand and we will unmute you. Thank you so much.
So there was one question in the chat. Is there anything else that you can use to label that's not a social security number? And I guess I would extend that also to a driver's license number because not everyone has a driver's license.
I think, and the delegate may correct me, I think it has to be either your driver's license or your Virginia identification card. So the social security number, I think, is incorrect. I think it is your T number on your driver's license or whatever the number is on your Virginia identification card.
Thank you. Any other questions for our Commonwealth Attorney before we head into a discussion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds in General Assembly? And also, just while people are thinking about if they want to ask a question, I want to thank Principal Giles for being here as well. We love having you here, and thank you for opening up Carver for all of our summer school students. You do a fantastic job. We're very lucky to have you in the RPS system. So thank you for being here. And I also want to acknowledge Tito Luna, who is our community contact with VCU and does a tremendous job keeping us informed with what is happening at VCU. We had hoped to perhaps do a presentation on the master plan and where VCU is in that process. We're going to look to do that, I think, in September, but Tito, thank you for being here. Principal Giles, thank you for being here. And again, Delegate Adams, I appreciate you spending some time with us evening. And Tito has put his email address if anyone has a question about VCU, like return, when students are coming back, et cetera. All right, last call for questions for our Commonwealth Attorney. And you can also just email my office directly if you have a question you're not comfortable asking here, and we will ask for you in another setting and get back to you with that information. All right, well, thank you so much. I'm gonna turn it over to someone I got to know when I was working on Fan Parks. Laura Bateman is in the Fan. She also is one of our lobbyists for the city. Appreciate you being here this evening to talk a little bit about the American Rescue Plan Act funds. This is something that our office has, all the city council, all of administration, budget office, this has been a high priority for months now, because we are getting two big amounts of money. One, because we're a city, and another because we're a county. So lucky for us, there's so much that doesn't work in our favor as the capital, but now we actually get something working in our favor. We're getting about $155 million. And Laura and her colleague, Ron, are going to talk about what that is, what qualifies for it. We can take some questions, and just keep in mind, our office wants to hear from you what is important for us to fund with this, sort of once in a generation amount of money. And with that, I will stop talking and let Laura take over. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm gonna go into screen share because I have a few slides for you all. Okay, are you all able to see that screen?
Not yet.
Well,
Nope.
I don't think we're seeing it.
You're not seeing it.
I can try and prompt you to see if that works. Let me try that real quick.
Yeah. Well, while you're getting that sorted out, the update from the city council side is that we've had several conversations at city council level about how we're going to work together with administration on the process of deciding. And then we had a special work session on Monday, which I thought was very, very constructive, where the city of Alexandria presented how they handled their decision-making process on their ARP funds. And then we had some good, Q&A. We had a facilitator that our interim chief of staff organized for us to talk about what the process should look like, how we will build in equity to these decisions, and how we will collaborate with administration. So I believe you can go back and view that on the city website if you're interested. I thought seeing how Alexandria did it was very beneficial, and I'll put those links in the chat as well. They are getting, I want to say 55 million. So what we're going to be able to do is much larger, thankfully.
Okay, let's try this again.
Looks good.
You got it? You're seeing it? Okay, I'll get to slideshow. Okay, great. Oh, so it's really great to be here. I'm Laura Bateman, and I'd like to introduce my colleague who is also online, Ron Jordan, who is the principal of Advantage Strategies. As Councilwoman Jordan said, and she's no relation to my colleague Ron Jordan, although I don't know, they might be cousins from way back. I don't know.
I forgot to mention that. No relation.
Anyway, I'm just pleased to work with Ron at Advantage Strategies, and it's a pleasure to be here with the councilwoman. We have worked many years together through Fan District Association Centers. So let's talk about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, and also talk to you a little bit about the coming General Assembly session that is going to kick off on August the 2nd. There is, I just got a new computer and it's really, really touchy. There is a total of $3.2 trillion of federal spending that has been doled out across six separate bills in Congress. It's just a lot of money for coronavirus pandemic aid. And the American Rescue Plan Act, as you can see here, is the last and most recent tranche of money that the federal government has let out to the states. We tend to think of it, and you will hear it said quite a bit about the different buckets. Literally, here are the buckets. There's the federal bucket to the state, which is $13.8 billion. That's to the federal government that's giving to the Commonwealth of Virginia to then distribute. Then there's the state bucket that is $3.76 billion to go out to programs and whatnot. And then there's, as Catherine mentioned, the Richmond specific bucket, $158 million for the city of Richmond and $123 million for Richmond Public Schools.
And I'd
So,
add on, and remember, this is on top of all the money that they've already received, both that the schools have already received
right.
previous efforts.
So the 13.8 billion in direct program aid from ARPA that the state's receiving is coming through. This slide just kind of represents where all that money is flowing through and what programs it's flowing through to. Homeowner Assistance Fund, Emergency Rental Assistance, the transit formula, transit work grants, childcare grants, just a lot of money coming through. So as I mentioned, Richmond's expected ARPA allocation turns out to be $692 per person in the city. And that does include the city and the county allocation. So the uses of what the United States Department of the Treasury has currently has interim guidance that that guides the use of those funds. And it's interim guidance to this point. We expect final guidance should be out in a few weeks. I know a lot of local governments that I work with have been, they really haven't played their hand about what they're going to do with their local dollars because they're waiting on that final guidance. I think one local government, not the city of Richmond, but mentioned to me that their experience is replete with acting on things with interim plans and then having to switch gears because the final guidance, completely changed. So they're kind of hanging back and waiting for that final guidance. So it's going to be allocated to the city in 2 allotments. The city's already gotten their first half of that allotment. It must be allocated by December 31st of 2024. It must be spent by 2026. If it's not, then it gets returned to the Treasury. The uses must fall into 5 broad categories: supporting public health expenditures, like the COVID-19 mitigation efforts, behavioral health care, public health and safety, addressing negative economic impacts caused by the emergency, like economic harm to the workers, essential workers, households, small businesses, impacted industries, and the public sector, replacing lost public sector revenue. And there's the formula for governments to work out how much, what the revenue, what's attributable to revenue loss. For providing premium pay for essential workers, those that really have borne the greatest risk to their health because of their service in these critical areas. And 5th, investing in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, improving access to clean drinking water, supporting wastewater, stormwater infrastructure, and expanding access to broadband internet. And we feel fairly confident that for Richmond, it may not always, it's not necessarily an issue of broadband availability, but of broadband affordability. And so there are uses for that within that category. So we're being told, be transformational. Local governments are all like, okay, we've got to be transformational about this. This is once in a generation funding. The state's saying the same thing. And so it's a high level of coordination. Going to take a high level of coordination for the state and the local governments to collaborate and to be very intentional about where they intend to make these transformational changes. So as I mentioned, a couple of disclaimers. The U.S. Treasury guidance is interim guidance, and we hope to get the final in the next couple of weeks. The Virginia State Legislature, the General Assembly comes back on August the 2nd in order to allocate the state ARPA dollars. And well, as of this afternoon, this last bullet, the state is also looking at revenues, excess revenues of $2.6 billion. So there is so much money out there, and that's a good thing. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Ron Jordan to talk a little bit more about what we can expect in the special session. Ron?
Let me unmute. Sorry. Thanks, Laura. As Laura indicated, if you go back to your earlier slide that showed the various categories of ARPA money, keep going, that one right there. You'll see that the General Assembly is coming to town essentially to act on the 4.3 billion shown there in the first line. All these other funds are also flowing through the state, but they're flowing through federal agencies to state agencies. And there, in addition, there's money in and above those amounts that are flowing into the state. There's money for Paycheck Protection Program flowed into the state. There's a lot of money. There's about flowing into the state for through the SBA for restaurant assistance. To help workers and restaurants impacted by the pandemic. So you have to look at the totality of the money that's coming into the state and that will be available. I know the General Assembly money committees are looking at that. And if there's money available in another category, for example, there's another category in the ARPA for broadband. In addition, the state put $100 million in broadband at the last General Assembly session. So it may be unlikely that the state will put any of its state recovery funds in broadband, primarily because you can't spend it fast enough. As Laura indicated, it has to be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and has to be fully expended by December 31st, 2026. And should there be changes in the makeup of Congress, it's quite possible that some of this money, they could claw some of this money back if it's not been spent. So the General Assembly is coming to town on August 2nd, supposedly just to deal with appropriation of these funds and the election of certain judges. This in effect will be a budget amendment session, just like we have every odd year. Except this is supposed to be exclusively focused on the budget. The leadership of the Senate certainly is of a mind that they want to focus exclusively on the budget and the judges and not take up anything else. And their vision is they'll be here and done in a week. In talking to House members, they're not quite there yet in terms of limiting the scope of the session, nor are they there in terms of limiting it to a week. However, there is recognition by everyone that they need to have rules governing the operation of the General Assembly with firm deadlines, unlike what they've had in the last special session, which led to a lot of chaos, frankly, and disharmony between the two chambers. As Laura indicated, the General Assembly is also looking at when the year end closes out on and reported of probably 2.6 billion. Now, as she indicated, it's a lot of money. However, over half of that money is already spoken for by statute and constitution. Almost half of it will go into the state's rainy day fund. Another large amount will go to the Virginia Water Quality Improvement Fund. And in addition, I know in the upcoming budget, the governor is looking at a substantial increased cost for rebenchmarking of public education and the growth in Medicaid enrollment due to the pandemic has been substantial, and that will require additional general funds for Medicaid. So while everyone has visions of dollar signs and sugar plums on that for that 2.6 billion, I would caution you that a large part of it's already spoken for. And the General Assembly, I think there is unanimity among the leadership and the governor that they're not going to deal with that until the regular session in January. In addition, there are other bills floating through Congress that are going to have the potential to provide money for the city. One of those is the President Biden's American Jobs Act, or referred to as the infrastructure bill, that has the potential to provide additional money for the city. And as you may have read in the papers or seen in the media, the Congress has brought back the earmark process, and members of Congress of the House of Representatives can earmark a small portion of funds for projects in their districts. Their limits are a lot smaller than those in the Senate, and the Senate has a similar ability to earmark money in the federal budget for projects in their district. And we've been pursuing those with the CAO's office. So as the council goes about looking at projects they want to spend with ARPA, part of our advice has been to try to keep your eye on the big picture, because there is a lot of money. There are plenty of sources to seek money from, even though there are restrictions on how the money can be used. Our advice was build a list and then let's see where we can find the money to fund it from. And with that, Councilwoman Jordan, I'm back to you.
All right, thank you. Well, I hope that gives everyone an overview of all the different pots of money and what has been occupying a lot of our time at City Hall, because every single budget session we hear there's not enough money to fund the needs in the city. And we're in a very unique opportunity where the fault lines in Richmond that were exacerbated by COVID, we actually have some significant dollars to maybe address them. So as a body and with administration and with our residents, we need to figure out how we're going to be as strategic as possible to amplify the impact of these dollars. I see there is a question. Mariah, is that you with your hand raised?
Yes, it is. I had a question for Mr. Jordan. I was looking at that little slide that you had for elementary, secondary, and higher education. What are the restrictions for the usage of that money? Can it be used for infrastructure, since we are talking about building schools?
At this point, the guidance will allow use of money for certain renovations of school renovations, primarily related to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which certainly that's a big need in a lot of the RPS schools. A number of localities and school divisions have asked Treasury for clarification on whether or not it could be used for construction of new schools or substantial renovation of existing buildings. And we're awaiting guidance on that when the final guidance comes out this month. Most people are not optimistic that it's going to be opened up that much, but yes, you can certainly use it for certain renovation efforts.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our guests? Well, one thing that I think you didn't mention, but will be, I think, one of the priorities for the city possibly, is dealing with our combined stormwater overflow, CSO. And it's raining right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if people, you see the alerts when there is an overflow situation and it's not safe to go in the James River. So Richmond is one of 3 localities in the state that has a combined stormwater system. And that means what you flush in your toilet is combined with what comes in the storm drains. And then that together goes out to a treatment area. And when the rate of water or stormwater is so high, it overwhelms the system. Instead of being able to hold it back and treat it, it all gets discharged into the James River, which we love. And it's not a good situation, obviously, but it's a result of our very old infrastructure. And I think the price tag for fixing that is something like $880 million. And the General Assembly passed legislation requiring Richmond to come into compliance with clean water rules and regulations. So we're on the hook to fix this situation by a certain date. And our stormwater fees are already very high. So this is a moment where the city is looking at this funding cycle as potential to deal with those CSOs. And I don't know if anyone wants to speak more to that, but you will, if you're on this call, you will probably hear that in the news at some point as a request during this time from administration. I signed on to a letter that Delegate Betsy Carr is advancing, requesting funding for the James River Master Plan implementation. So I feel like these two things go really hand in hand. We want our water in the James River to be clean. We want people to be able to access the James River. I think more than ever during the pandemic, we saw the value of our open spaces for our mental health, just for recreation, for so much. So, and the James River is an ecotourist asset for the city. You know, VCU did a study, and I think they said for every $1 someone comes to experience the James River, they spend 60 in Richmond. And that amplifies to about $33 million in revenue for the city for people who come to enjoy the James River. So imagine how much more robust those numbers could be if we actually had infrastructure and more accessibility for people to go enjoy the parks, and that they consistently knew the water was going to be clean and safe. So I just wanted to highlight those two comments. And within our own process at the city, our next meetings are probably not going to be until September to discuss priorities for this money. So City Council typically takes a break in August. We're halfway through July, and I will be sure to let everyone know when there are opportunities to let us know, let your city representatives know how you feel about the funding. In the interim, you can be letting your delegates and elected at the state level know your priorities, because they are figuring out what to do with the state money. So that's a lot. Sorry. If there are any other questions for our two guests, I really appreciate them sharing their information. It's provided a lot of clarity for City Council, and I thought it would be beneficial for constituents to hear as well.
Just one other thing on CSO, the date the city has been mandated by the General Assembly to complete all the fixes on the stormwater system within 14 years. That's $883 million, which is a big chunk of change.
If anybody has that money laying around, please raise your hand.
My couch is not that big.
And I do have an additional question in the chat. Ron and Laura, is the presentation that you guys shared this evening available or shareable in any way?
Sure, yeah. I think I sent a copy to you in advance then.
Yeah, so we would be happy to share it out to anybody who's interested. And then we're also recording this meeting, and it'll be up on our YouTube after the fact if you'd like to go back and watch it that way. And in the meantime, I will figure out if we can drop it in the chat as a document. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great being with you.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time this evening. Okay, so we are now moving into the council update and district news portion of this meeting. Sven, if you want to put up those slides. And I would love to acknowledge our two interns. So we have two interns helping out the 2nd District office this summer for the month of July. And we have Ebony Jordan, that's our third Jordan of the night, with us. She is a junior at TJ High School, and she is a member of Girls for a Change program. And we also have Tamazi Taylor, who is coming to us through Art 180, which is in right off of Broad Street, if you're not familiar with it. It's a great organization, and he is a junior at Huguenot. So they are on tonight taking notes about questions that are being asked, and participating in a lot of different things throughout our many various responsibilities and tasks of City Council office. All right, so council resources, if you could increase the slide a little bit. I'm going to turn this over to Sven, who's going to just quickly go over some of the updated laws. And hopefully this will help us with some of the issues that we get outreach to our office on.
Yeah, and I think Ron and Laura and also our Commonwealth's attorney, Ms. McKeechin, alluded to a lot of the really important changes that came down from the General Assembly this past session and that we can anticipate in August. Certainly the big ticket ones being marijuana legalization. So I wanted to focus here on some of the laws that may not get quite as much coverage, but are definitely going to impact your day-to-day life in the city of Richmond, either as of July 1 or potentially in the future, should Richmond elect to adopt what the General Assembly has allowed for them to do. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see some statewide mandated legislative changes that the General Assembly enacted as of July 1, including a Virginia Voting Rights Act that included a number of early voting and in-person voting changes and provisions, including an ability for localities such as Richmond to allow for Sunday voting prior to November elections, as well as the establishment of a permanent voter absentee list where folks can subscribe essentially to receive mail absentee ballots for future elections without individually applying for each election. Second, in the sort of vein of pedestrian and cyclist and sort of mobility legislation, everybody should be very aware that you are not allowed to drive as of July 1 with your phone in your hand. That is considered, distracted driving that you can be pulled over for. And in addition, there was legislation to require that as of July 1, both for cyclists, if you are a motorist passing a cyclist on the road and you cannot allow them the 3 feet that is required in state law in the lane that they are in, then you are required to pass in the opposite lane. So to completely change lanes in order to pass on a motorway. And then lastly, for pedestrians, if you are in a crosswalk in the city of Richmond and across Virginia, motorists are required to not just change lanes to avoid you or to slow down, but actually to come to a stop. And you'll see some of this new legislation reflected in the Stop for Pedestrian signage that has gone up at a number of locations across the city, in ground, in the street, in crosswalks, that is notifying motorists to that law. And then lastly, kind of a bummer, but also a big win for our environment. The General Assembly banned the intentional release of balloons. So whether it be a graduation or any other sort of event, keep that in mind that you could be held liable and there's a fine associated for deliberately releasing balloons. And then on the right-hand side here, we have legislation that the General Assembly passed that allows for localities like Richmond to be able to implement this legislation, but it is not required. And 2 of these bills were carried by a wonderful member of our local legislative delegation, Delegate Betsy Carr. The first of which has to do with the administration of blighted and derelict properties. And essentially what that does is it expands the list of localities in the Commonwealth that are able to classify blighted and derelict properties and structures differently in terms of how they are taxed. So the city has an interest in revitalizing properties that are vacant, blighted, and derelict, and this allows for localities like Richmond, if they elect to tax those properties at a higher rate to incentivize those property owners to actually take that necessary corrective action. The second is allowing localities to, kind of in a similar vein, fine property owners for clutter accumulation. And that can include anything from, furniture to other objects that can accumulate in the within public eyesight on private property. And it would act sort of similar to how our grass ordinance works right now, where you can be cited for an accumulation of clutter on your property. And if you do not abate that clutter within a certain time frame, the locality, in this case Richmond, could elect to clean up that clutter and charge the property owner an amount that is a lot more expensive than if they were to have done it themselves. And then lastly, again, Delegate Carr carried legislation that would allow Richmond and other localities to reduce speed limits in certain business or residential districts. Previously, the lower limit was 25, and this amends that down to 15 miles an hour. So again, sort of in the vein of the Vision Zero and pedestrian and cyclist-oriented legislation that was passed this past General Assembly session. And then at the bottom of the screen there, you will see if this overview and the wealth of information that Ron and Laura and Ms. McEachin shared with you all tonight does not satiate your appetite for legislation at the state level, you can head to the Division of Legislative Services highlights that they put together every year for relevant legislation that made it out of the General Assembly. And you'll have some fun light reading there. So that's my update.
Great, thank you, Sven. Are there any questions regarding this slide? I know these three, the specific bills that we listed, I would say are definitely of interest to our office based on the outreach we've been getting from constituents. And I will just roll into talking about the Broad Street Task Force because it is somewhat related. There are a number of blighted properties, unfortunately, along Broad Street that perhaps this new bill will enable us to more effectively incentivize the owners to do something with these properties. So while I'm going over a little bit of a Broad Street Task Force update, here are some additional information for you about things coming up. Yes, we will have questions at the end, Ansley, absolutely. So some of this information we've already gone through, just want to put some things on your radar. But Broad Street Task Force, I had a 2-hour meeting this morning with the head of Parks and Rec, with the head of Venture Richmond, with RPD, and with someone from the mayor's office, talking about Broad Street. So they had done some outreach via a survey, they formed committees, and now we're in the process of sort of accumulating that information and feedback into strategies to help Broad Street come back, reattract visitors, and I'll be excited to share that once we get it in a little bit more digestible format. Monuments, that has been in the news a lot recently as the different papers to handle the pedestals that remain have made their way through first the Architectural Review Board, then the Urban Design Commission, then Planning Commission, and then they will go up to City Council. So I feel like there's a lot of different information that's been out there. Some of it is confusing. And I just wanted to clarify some basic points about the pedestals that remain on Monument Avenue. And there are a few other locations. So like AP Hill and in Churchill. So before my time on council, there was an ordinance that City Council passed to remove the monuments. And that was based on the power recently granted by the General Assembly for localities to remove these war monuments. The City Council passed that ordinance, included 12 monuments, and they, the tops were taken off. There are 2 phases outlined in that ordinance: removal of the statues, removal of the pedestals. So now we're at that administrative process. I think we all remember some of those statues were taken down by protesters, others were taken down by the city. Now we're at the process where we are working through the pedestal removals. And that is not something that's up for debate. And I think that has been very confusing during this process. And we had a letter from the governor's office weighing in, saying that they thought we should wait. They have backtracked on that. So has the VMFA. That is not what the legislation, how it's written. That's not part of the decision-making process. So again, before my time, but that's the reality of the situation with the pedestals. When it comes to once everything is removed, what does the city do with it? The city council is still figuring out how they're going to work with administration to evaluate and move forward with the requests that have come in for those statues. And I don't expect any meetings to happen until September on that. So as soon as I know what that meeting schedule is, I will absolutely share it out. And Sven has put on the chat where you can find more information about that, the Confederate monument disposition. And it is confusing. It's, obviously dragged on. We saw Charlottesville make some progress on theirs just in the last few days. What else am I missing on that? I might take a pause at this point and answer questions if there are questions about the Broad Street Task Force or the monuments. I saw a question in the chat. Are there a list of distressed properties on Broad for the task force? And that was one of the action items of the meeting today, was to perhaps contract out even, but to create that list, a finite list where we can really target and try and work with the owners, figure out what is the impediment to them having that property in better condition. Do they need help from the city to repair windows? Some people still have board up windows, just a few. Luckily, I think most people are getting back into a groove. I encourage, if you haven't been down to Broad Street recently, please go down. Restaurants are reopening their new businesses. And I love going down there. So great question, Chloe. Any other questions about monuments or Broad Street Task Force? And you're welcome, of course, to always email us your feedback on these things. Mariah, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just had a question, Catherine, based on the statues. Have military installations with museums, I know like you have Fort Pickett, AP Hill, and they have a museum down at Fort Pickett, been offered the opportunity to put the statues in their museums?
I think at this point in the process, anyone could send the city their proposal for our statues. So I cannot remember if they were one of the groups that said we would like that statue or not, but it was an open process and there was a matrix for how we are going to evaluate that. Obviously, one of the top things we are going to evaluate is, are we sending something that caused harm in our community to a location where it's going to cause harm there? So I know that that's been something that we received outreach about. And if you've been, not everyone can follow these city council meetings, I totally get it, but that is a discussion point often, because we don't want these pieces to go where they're going to be venerated by another community and cause more harm there. But museums is like on the list, obviously, of something that would be in consideration. And here, Sven is so quick in the chat. I really appreciate his assistance here. He has put some more information about the list of applicants and the criteria.
And I will also share that I am going to go ahead and allow every participant to unmute themselves at this stage. We usually lose most of our most dedicated Zoom bombers around now. So if you are a Zoom bomber, be gone. But if you are not, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have it.
Okay, I see a new message at the bottom. Let's see here. Oh, the plans to place trash cans on Broad. Yeah, trash is a huge issue. So DPW is, Department of Public Works, absolutely part of this conversation. And a lot of trash cans actually are GRTC trash cans. So that's another avenue for us to try and get more receptacles so people have somewhere to put their trash. And will you put, Sven, the RVA 311 in the chat? If you see a trash can that's not being serviced frequently enough, please submit a help ticket for that. And I talked to the director of DPW today about trash cans, actually. And he noted that when the guys are cycling through to pick up trash, like the regular trash guys coming through to pick up your residential trash, they are now trying to add in the trash cans as they go along. Whereas before, the separate crew. So they realized people were home more than they have been. These trash cans are getting a lot more use, and as a city, we need to keep up with it more. So to get more trash cans, and then specifically to Broad Street, this was unfortunate when they moved some of the trash cans got burned and damaged. We're still replacing those. There was also a situation where when TRTC was moving bus stops, they removed some trash cans that they thought belonged to them, but actually they belong to the city. So we're still working through trying to get those replaced and put back in location. And it's they're actually surprisingly expensive, those ones that you see out in the public on the sidewalks.
And I'll just add a little bit of context on that as well, that be mindful that generally DPW will only place public trash cans, again, cost being a major limiting factor, however, that is already on a trash route. And so, you know, it becomes a little bit more difficult for them to place trash cans outside of where they already have pre-established routes.
Thank you, Sven. Ansley, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Councilwoman Jordan. I know that you have been working with your colleagues in city administration about allocation, utilization of the rescue funds towards people with housing insecurities. Can you elaborate on kind of maybe some themes, priorities that you've had in those discussions?
Thank you. Yes. So on our unhoused residents, need a number of services, and it's not an easy fix. So this is something that takes a lot of different departments working together. And we recently had a paper that passed. Stephanie Lynch, Councilmember Lynch, I think was the main patron of it. I signed on, stating that we were going to prioritize some funding that we were going to get from ARP to help address housing issues. Sven, I don't know if you can put that in the chat, but you have to tackle it from a number of different angles. So like, one, you need to have more housing. Like, two, you need more services. And then, we need more healthcare providers. These, social workers. I really rely on Councilmember Lynch, who is this is her field. So I'm grateful that she's on council because she keeps this front of mind for us, and she understands it in a way that I just can't, because it's not my field. I'm learning more. Additionally, you were looking at having another meeting. We were actually texting about this yesterday and this morning, because we do have unhoused families that are in hotels currently. And that is going to be wrapping up soon. I believe some have been discharged. And we need a real clear, strategic, and comprehensive response from the city so that those are successful outcomes as much as they can. Like, we need to try and be placing these people in housing once they, there needs to be a discharge process. So I know she had a meeting with leadership at the city on this topic, and we're trying to get ahead of it. Additionally, we're all super hot right now, but before we know it, it's going to be fall. And what are the plans for the cold weather shelter? So, these are things that we keep trying to push and keep at the forefront so that we're not being reactive. Another part of this equation is eviction diversion. So right now, I think, our RRHA, our housing authority, evictions have been, are on pause. I think that has been extended, but to the extent that we can look at helping keep our families in stable housing, applying for funding. I mean, there's so many categories within the ARP funding that is specifically for this, because someone may be behind on rent for a number of different reasons. And while, technically you may be able to evict that person, you're destabilizing a family, and but then also it's just not cost effective. We spend a lot of money trying to provide services and emergency assistance to people who have become unhoused. So to the extent that we can keep people in the housing that they're already in, obviously I feel like that is that should be a main priority. So I'm sorry, it's sort of a long-winded reply, Ansley. Did that help answer a little bit of what we're doing at the city council level?
It did. I just finished typing, and you may not have the answer, and that's fine. Could you elaborate any on the concerns that we've heard about individuals not being able to reach homeward staff, and on the hotline, and particularly those individuals that, you know, don't have access to phones the way some of us might do?
This is what is so, I think, tricky and tragic about the situation. So we don't have I don't think there's a 24-hour phone line. They have staffing issues like everyone else across the country. And then, so really, you need to go to the people where they are to try and connect them to services. It's very difficult if you're waiting for them to call you. You know, are they gonna have a pen and a paper? Like, what are they gonna do with the information once they contact Homeward? So, and again, I rely on Councilmember Lynch and our staff to come up with, you know, what actually works, because this isn't my primary, you know, field of expertise. But, you know, the extent that we can go to people where they are and make sure it's not, you don't have to have a phone, you not have to count on someone answering when you do call, because that is very problematic. It doesn't seem like we're having the success that we need for this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions at this point? Checking the chat box. So I've mentioned the James River Master Plan letter that I signed on to. Also, I think it's in the hopper now, but obviously we're in a climate emergency. So I'm forwarding legislation to state that as a city council that we are in a climate emergency, and offer up some concrete steps for what we're going to do as a city to address the climate emergency. Once we have that finalized more, we'll share it out and ask for people to support it. There's a lot the city can be doing. I think we could be a real leader in this. Certainly it was one of the priorities that came out of the master plan. It's chapter 6. And it's something that I'm passionate about. Certainly talked about a lot when I was campaigning, but I'm excited to share that too with you when we have a finished document. We are also going to be doing a mailer. You know, to this point, it's been all virtual. We're looking forward to getting back in person. Also, you know, to the point of not everyone has a phone or access. We are going to be sending out a hard letter with information on city services, you know, something that you can put up on your refrigerator or you can keep by your door that has sort of like those handy numbers that you want access to. Open to feedback if there are specific things people want to receive, keeping in mind that we're trying to keep it to like a one pager that we can trifold so that we can reach as many people as possible. We're going to wait till the big changeover with students moving in and out, but we look forward to getting that mailer out to everybody. And Sven, what else am I leaving off here?
Oh, you are not leaving off anything. This is great. But I wanted to also share the city resources page that we put together.
Yes, let's put that back up. Thank you.
Yeah, in our presentation that I will also be dropping in the chat for folks if you want to then actually be able to, you know, click these links and search through here at your own speed later on. Let's see. Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, if you could make it larger. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Well, we're at 7:30. That's sort of miraculous. Appreciate everyone being here. Feel free to reach out to our office directly. There's so much going on in the second. There's really no way to cover it all, but appreciate you spending some of your evening with us. Hope this gives you sort of a better understanding of what has been consuming our time at City Council. I mean, making the most of this funding opportunity to address Richmond's, you know, underlying challenges. We've got to make the most of this moment. Let's see. Okay, people are saying thank you. Good. I thought there were some additional questions coming in. All right, well, everyone have a wonderful night. Be good to each other. If you haven't already gotten your vaccine, please go get your vaccine. And if you have suggestions for future guests at meetings, please let us know. And hopefully the next time we do this, we'll actually all be in person, which would be great. Good night and thank you.